Hello there. This book is for all who have fallen or fallen short, who have fallen into darkness and need a way to the light, who have been misguided but want directions for to light, to salvation, who maybe want to not feel alone in this world, as I felt alone in this world. And I hope with this book and these pages you read, you will come to comfort and joy and understanding that this world it's got challenges, is a lot of challenges, and they're gonna keep coming, and there's gonna be punches coming, bills coming, letdowns on their way, people that are toxic on their way. And with this book, I'm gonna share with you the punches that came at me, but God helped me keep fighting, keep walking, get back up, and not be knocked out. This is a Christian message. This is a life message I would like to share with you, so that you don't lose hope in God or yourself. I hope that you get closer to God and closer to salvation and to heaven by reading these pages, and it comforts you. So with that, I would like to share with you how my life began and the road I took and the punches that were thrown at me and that hit me and that were knocking me down and knocking me out. And it starts in where I was born in Santa Rosa, California. Son to Ramon and Antonia, who came here from Mexico, migrated here illegally, so that they could have a better life and prosper, because it was a tough economic situation in Mexico, and they wanted to leave that, and they strive for the American dream. And the earliest memories I have are in Santa Rosa, on this street called Sunset, and these apartments I lived in. And the first memory that comes to mind is the first punch I felt. One of the first punches I felt was my father was watching me. I was maybe 5 years old, and my father was watching over me, babysitting. And I just remember playing with a kid in the living room, the son of this lady that my dad was with. I didn't know what was going on, but because I was a kid. But then we were playing in the living room, and I wanted to show my dad something that I was entertaining the kid with. So I knock on the door, and I walk in on him and the woman having sex. And he yells at me, and I close the door, and I was kind of confused, and I never told my mother about that. My dad was promiscuous man and was most of all of my life. He sometimes, had anger problems, would spank us, and wasn't really there. He would usually be with one of his mistresses, so most of the time my mother was taking care of us. Maybe you guys have had the same experience. It's unfortunately something kind of common. Unfortunate. During that time on Sunset Street, another punch that was thrown at me was my brother pushed me down the stairs, concrete stairs, and I fell all the way down, cracked my head, and I had to be taken to the hospital. I believe it was on purpose, and I don't understand why. I was probably about 5 or 6 then too. After that, I had another brother who was affiliated with gangs. And this neighborhood we lived in was the low income area of Santa Rosa, and it was infested with gangs. At one point, it was the most high crime area in the 90s. And my brother ended up stealing some computers from a school one day. He was like 12 or 13. And the cops showed up at the house, and they took him away. That was sad for me because he was the brother that I looked up to and would protect me from my other brother a lot. And he was one of my friends, and one time he actually took me to a store, Walmart, and I wanted a toy, and he's like, just grab it and walk out with it. And I didn't know what stealing was at the time. I was 5 years old maybe. And so I grabbed it, the toy. There were creepy crawlers, gummy toys to eat, and I took it. So just starting off, I was just a baby, and already I was on the wrong path. Later on, maybe in this 5, 6, 7-year-old range, I started kindergarten, and also hanging out with the gang members in my neighborhood that were older, in their 20s, in their high teens, and they were my role models now. and they allowed me to be there with them. And before my brother was arrested, he initiated me into a gang, and my mission to be initiated was going to be having to go to the opposing neighborhood of the opposing gang and throw our crew's name in their area in the middle of the street in front of them to antagonize them. And they dressed me up in gang clothes and told me to go in the middle of the street where they were at, close to where they're at, and throw up, that's what they call it, throw it up, and represent the gang that we were Sureños X3 at that time. And I went, and I enjoyed it because I looked up to these people. They looked like they had power. They looked like they had everything they needed. And after that, I started hanging out with them more and more. My brother went to a group home, and I ended up staying with the gangsters. They took me in like their little brother, and I started becoming more and more involved in the gang lifestyle, hanging out with them. I was still just about 6 years old, and next thing you know, I'm hanging out with them, and there's a shootout, and they're shooting at us, and then they tell me to take off and hide behind this tree while they're shooting at the other gang. That things like that were happening often. People would come over to our neighborhood to break all the windows on the cars. People would be getting jumped if we spotted them from an opposing gang, the enemy. We would jump them, embarrass them. We would initiate other people into the gang. And that was another blow, another stab from the enemy, another punch. The enemy's always on the prowl, and the devil is cunning, and he wants to get you young. He doesn't care how old you are. He just wants you to go into the darkness. And he was taking me to the darkness. I was, even as a kid, I wasn't really cruel to people. I thought that was part of being alive, was protecting our neighborhood, what we represent. If you were from a different color, representing a different color like red, then we didn't like that, and that was just natural to me. I would have the guys I looked up to teach me how to be cruel, and that led to fights at school in like second grade, getting jumped by other little kids because I was part of a different gang. Being out late. At a young age, maybe like you, I was deceived. And that's something that helped me in my realization as I got older, that to accept, I was deceived, and that's not the correct life. That's not the righteous life. That's not the life that's going to bring salvation or heaven to you. And it's true. And it's not doing anything positive for anybody. Um, After a few years in that neighborhood, my family moved out of there, and I pretty much left the gang members behind, but I kept that mentality in my mind, and kept wanting to, be faithful to my gang, and I would try to, throw gang signs up, be where the gangsters were in the new neighborhood. I was a little kind of an outcast now as a kid and in school, because I was mostly used to hanging out with older people, and it just wasn't normal for me to hang around with the kids at school. But I started, fitting back in and making friends at my new school. I stopped most of my gang actions in the new area I lived. But unfortunately, my father, he kept on with his promiscuous self and brought her to live with us, and tried to lie to my mother, saying that it was a friend, needed somewhere to stay, but it was really his other woman. And that just brought trouble to my home, brought sadness, brought confusion. In that neighborhood, there was this woman named Doña Mary. She ended up taking me into her house because she saw that my mom couldn't handle so many kids. There was 8 of us all together, and I grew up with her a little bit. That was a blessing. She was teaching me, a different life. She was a businesswoman, and she was teaching me manners that my family didn't teach me. But after that, in that neighborhood, I was mostly growing up without gangs in my life or gangsters in my life. It was a nicer neighborhood now. But I was still out with neighborhood kids and trying to fit in. At the same time, I would run into circumstances where my mentality would go back to being a gangster, and I would see people from a different gang, and I would want to fight them or pretty much start an altercation. I was barely maybe 10 now, starting altercations with other boys from neighborhoods. I was always paranoid if I entered certain neighborhoods, because it was just part of being in a gang and knowing where you are, knowing your whereabouts, and knowing where the enemy's at. And sometimes the enemy was close. So that was just, me growing up paranoid was a hazard to my life. One time during that same time, I was about 10, living in Valley Oak, Santa Rosa, and I visited my uncle that lived not far, and I accidentally threw a rock at a girl who was teasing me about liking my cousin, and I was just throwing a rock to scare her off, but it hit her in the head, and she started bleeding, and she took off to her house. But I had that guilt in my heart for a long time that I hurt her, and that's another way that the enemy is, another tool the enemy uses is guilt on us, so that we don't grow. But God, forgives us. It says in the Bible, He forgives us if we come to Him with an honest heart and seek forgiveness. After I lived by Valley Oak in Santa Rosa and left Doña Mary's house, we ended up moving to a place called Russell Street in Santa Rosa. And I ended up going to this school where the rich kids were going, because I was in that in their district, but I was, definitely not rich like the rich kids, but I was making friends with them. There was no gangsters there at all. No kids that thought they were gangsters. I pretty much had let that die off. But there I learned that people put you in certain in a certain box. That's where I learned that there's rich and there's poor, and there's pretty much that. And sometimes it seemed like the girls that you would want to be with didn't completely want to be with you or want to be with me, because I was from the wrong side of the tracks, so to say. And that was kind of painful in a way. But it didn't, didn't completely break me. It was just another punch to get over. Another part of life, another obstacle in the way. I just didn't think much of it. I just knew that was how the world worked now. And it's unfortunate, is what I've learned throughout these years. Is that's unfortunate, but what's important is God doesn't see us that way. He doesn't see your bank statement and as what matters. What matters to Him is who you are in your heart. And if you you're doing righteous things, and if you believe in Him and believe in Jesus, and that you're being kind and loving, because those are the things that are going to be in heaven. But I didn't know that then. So I let it weigh me down a little bit. I still had girlfriends there, and hung out with kind of like the cool kids, I guess you would say. But I still felt like I didn't belong. After I lived on Russell Street, I ended up moving again, and now I moved to Cactus Street. I did a lot of moving growing up. I think it could be a problem, having to start over. And so I had to start over again. And then I moved to Cactus Street in Santa Rosa. In Cactus, my brother, he ended up getting out of the group home, and he came back to home to live with us. And so we were excited about that. Really happy about that. Unfortunately, my dad, he was still, unkind to my mother, unkind to me. He would show favor to my other brothers, is what I noticed, and exclude me sometimes. I remember times praying when I learned how to pray, and I wanted things to get better between my parents and them at a young age, and make me cry. But things didn't get better. As my brother was transitioning to live with us, he brought joy to our life again, and I would hang out with him sometimes, or with my new friends riding bikes. I worked as a newspaper salesman for subscriptions. That was one of my first jobs. I was maybe 10 or 11 years old, and I remember doing side jobs for like doing weed whacking, or pulling weeds. Growing up, I was after money. Yeah, I like making money then, and sometimes I would steal the. We would have to, when we were asking people to subscribe to the newspaper, we would tell them that we were part of an organization, and that donations were welcome, that they couldn't subscribe. And that was like a plot from the person that hired us to say. And I went with it. But then I would steal the donation money instead of giving it back to the guy, because he would want it for gas. And I would